All right, folks, we're back at it again. Joshua took a nice little break last week, but now back to Joshua. Today we have chapters 16 and 17 allotted for us, 2 chapters. And if you've been here for the last few weeks, you know what to expect. A lot of names of people and cities that seem rather redundant, unnecessary, but I think it's important for us to take a look at every portion of the Bible, including these more challenging ones. Challenge your patience, your willingness to fall asleep quietly, while disturbing others that are not asleep. But again, I think it's important. God knows why. I trust that there are things here that were important to the immediate audience when it was written originally, but also for us. Just as an example of Father Knows Best story, and this is probably one of my proudest moments as a parent. It really wasn't, but stories sound better when you introduce it in such fashion. We were at some type of kid gathering. I don't know if it was a birthday party or a carnival. I can't remember. Luca was about 3 years old, and he was given some balloons with the helium that, fly away if you allow it to. Again, probably around 3 or so. And then I was trying to tell him, hey, let me hold these for you, because I knew what was going to happen inevitably. And he's like, no, I got it. And I was like, okay, at least let me tie it around your wrist. And then he looked at me, and I don't think he even said the words, but almost like, chill. I got this. Like this 3-year-old little, barely a human looking at me like that. Like, I know what I'm doing. I got this. To the point where he was like, don't touch me. I got my balloons. I was like, okay, fine. You do you. Kid you not, turn around. 10 seconds later, turn back, and I see him looking up into the heavens. And then amongst a crowd of adults, I literally spoke this into existence by saying, crying in 3, 2, 1, and I pointed to him, and he started bawling like someone was literally amputating a limb, nonstop. Nothing could soothe his pain. Moral of the story: parents know best. We know what we're doing, even if you disagree or do not understand. And here, it is another one of those passages where it was very important based on God's decrees, standards, but most importantly, because he knew how his children were and still are. This was very important for it to be documented. As we've seen in previous chapters, now we are at a point in Joshua where the land is being divided up and allotted to the individual tribes. We saw the tribe of Judah attaining territories, and it was described very thoroughly, and now we have another tribe coming up, actually technically 2 tribes, Joseph's children, Ephraim and Manasseh, gaining and attaining their portion of the promised land, more or less in the middle of the nation. So again, we will see in great detail the boundaries and specific regions that they were able to gain, and also a couple little things here that are of interest that we will focus on eventually. So let's go ahead and get started with just a reading of these 2 chapters. I wish I could have done a smaller portion, but just based on how the chronology of events work, it does seem better fit for us to do both chapters at once, even though, again, it is a pretty long passage. But we can do this. Joshua chapter 16 and 17, I'll read and you can follow along. First 4 verses, just a general statement of their boundaries. And it says here, the lot fell to the children of Joseph from the Jordan by Jericho to the waters of Jericho on the east, to the wilderness that goes up from Jericho through the mountains to Bethel, then went out from Bethel to Luz, passed along to the border of the Architites at Ataroth, and went down westward to the boundary of the Japhletites, as far as the boundary of lower Beth Horon to Gezer, and it ended at the sea. So the children of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim, took their inheritance. The border of the children of Ephraim, according to their families, and thus the border of their inheritance on the east side was Ataroth, Adar, as far as the upper Beth Horon. And the border went out towards the sea on the north side of Mikmethath. Then the border went around eastward to Tenath, Shiloh, and passed by it on the east of Janohah. Then it went down from Janohah to Ataroth, and Nerah reached to Jericho and came out at the Jordan. The border went out from Tappuah westward to the brook of Cana, and it ended at the sea. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Ephraim according to their families. The separate cities for the children of Ephraim were among the inheritance of the children of Manasseh. All the cities were with their villages. And they did not drive out the Canaanites who dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwell among the Ephraimites to this day and have become forced laborers. Chapter 17. There was also a lot for the tribe of Manasseh, for he was the firstborn of Joseph, namely for Machir, the firstborn of Manasseh, the father of Gilead, because he was a man of war. Therefore he was given Gilead and Bashan. And there was a lot for the rest of the children of Manasseh, according to their families, for the children of Abiezer, the children of Helek, the children of Ezriel, the children of Shechem, the children of Hepher, and the children of Shemida. These were the male children of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, according to their families. But Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, had no sons, but only daughters. And these are the names of the daughters: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they came near before Eleazar the priest, before Joshua the son of Nun, and before the rulers, saying, the Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our brothers. Therefore, according to the commandment of the Lord, he gave them an inheritance among their father's brothers, the land of Gilead and Bashan, which were on the other side of the Jordan, because the daughters of Manasseh received an inheritance among his sons, and the rest of Manasseh's sons had the land of Gilead. And the territory of Manasseh was from Asher to Mikmethath, that lies east of Shechem. And the border went along south to the inhabitants of En-Tappuah. Manasseh had the land of Tappuah, but Tappuah on the border of Manasseh belonged to the children of Ephraim. And the border descended to the brook of Cana, southward to the brook. These cities of Ephraim are among the cities of Manasseh. The border of Manasseh was on the north side of the brook, and it ended at the sea. Southward, it was Ephraim's; northward, it was Manasseh's. And the sea was its border. Manasseh's territory was adjoining Asher on the north and Issachar on the east. And in Issachar and in Asher, Manasseh had Beth Shean and its towns, Eblim and its towns, the inhabitants of Eblim and its towns, the inhabitants of Dor and its towns, the inhabitants of Endor and its towns, the inhabitants of Tanakh and its towns, the inhabitants of Megiddo and its towns, 3 hilly regions. Yet the children of Manasseh could not drive out the inhabitants of those cities, but the Canaanites were determined to dwell in that land. And it happened when the children of Israel grew strong that they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not utterly drive them out. Verse 14. Then the children of Joseph spoke to Joshua, saying, Why have you given us only one lot and one share to inherit it? Since we are a great people, inasmuch as the Lord has blessed us until now. So Joshua answered them, If you are a great people, then go up to the forest country and clear a place for yourselves there in the land of the Perizzites and the giants, since the mountains of Ephraim are too confined for you. But the children of Joseph said, The mountain country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who dwelt in the land of the valley have chariots of iron, both those who are in Beth Shean and its towns, and those who are in the valley of Jezreel. And Joshua spoke to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, saying, You are a great people and have a great power. You shall not have only one lot, but the mountain country shall be yours. Although it is wooded, you shall cut it down, and its farthest extent shall be yours. For you shall drive out the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots and are strong. Amen. So here we have it. This second portion of the allotment. Now, as we know, we've already covered this, some tribes had already received land east of the Jordan that was managed by Moses. And now, as Joshua is doing something similar and dividing up the land amongst the remaining 9.5 tribes, we started a few weeks ago with Judah, and now the children of Ephraim, the children of Joseph, namely 2 tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. Half the tribe of Manasseh, the one that is west of the Jordan, now are receiving their inheritance. As we've seen before and we'll continue to see again, the chapter starts out by saying that the lot fell to the children of Joseph. So every single time that a tribe receives their land, it is described there as a process that was dictated by the lot of God. We don't know exactly how that worked out. We don't know for sure what elements were used, but the idea and the principle was that God was the one who was dictating not only the order, who got their land first, but the boundaries, the specific regions. Every single one of these decisions were dictated by God himself. And we see this as the story unfolds, specifically with this particular couple of tribes, that initially the Ephraimites were described with their regions, and then the tribe of Manasseh, the western portion of Manasseh, the half tribe, had land as well. And towards the end of each of their particular descriptions, there is something similar. There's something that the original author, wanted to document to make sure that this was saved for posterity. It actually would give a clue as to why the children of Israel suffered so much during the period of the Judges, this next book over. So we see on verse 10 of chapter 16 this very important documentation of events. And it says, once again, and they did not drive out the Canaanites who dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwell among the Ephraimites to this day and have become forced laborers. And once again, something similar on chapter 17, now on verse 13, and it says, and it happened when the children of Israel grew strong that they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not utterly drive them out. So both of these tribes, the children of Joseph, when they were given land, portions of the land, as we've seen before, they needed to actually conquer it. The initial half of the book of Joshua was all about battles and wars and conquering the region in general. But as these tribes are now taking possession of their particular regions, there are pockets of enemies still there that they themselves need to fight off and conquer and take over. But with these two tribes, as we saw also a couple weeks ago with Judah, there are regions that for one reason or another, they were not able to fully conquer and take over. These native peoples still remain there. But here we have an additional insight that we had not seen before. It is described here in such a way that you kind of wonder, well, we get that some of these people were very powerful, strong. Some of them are even described as giants. But based on verse 10 of chapter 16 and verse 13 of chapter 17, they became your slaves. If you are powerful enough to subjugate them into this category, they are essentially your servants. Wouldn't you or shouldn't you be powerful enough to totally defeat and conquer that region? Doesn't that make sense? And based on the precepts, based on the norms that were established, when God, through Moses, was describing what would occur in texts like Deuteronomy chapter 20, before the children of Israel crossed over the Jordan and started to battle these enemies and take over the land, God through Moses said, look, you may make treaties with certain people and certain cities that are in the periphery, in the boundary, in the outskirts of the land that I have given you. But regarding the cities that I have given you as an inheritance, no one should survive. Literally, it is stated there, everything that breathes must be killed. Everything. Yet, we see these little bits of information that will come later to make sense of the book of Judges. The book of Judges is all about these tribes, which aren't really a nation. They are, sort of the united tribes of Israel, for lack of a better way to explain it. But because they did not thoroughly conquer these people, these enemies, eventually they grew. And they became more powerful and bolder, to the point where they themselves started subjugating the individual tribes and the whole region. And eventually God would help them out by raising up a judge, and this judge would become a great military leader who would lead them to battle these enemies and then conquer that region back again. But these cycles of failure would continue over and over and over again. And this was the root of the problem. This was the genesis of the issues that would be felt for decades to come. And then we get to the point of the story where we have another documentation of history that is particularly poignant. As I've stated before, part of the reason why Joshua documented this so thoroughly, it was because he and God knew that his people, and all people in general, we are great complainers. We bicker. We fight. Often fight amongst each other. Brothers and sisters in Christ. Or biologically, siblings and part of each other's families. And oftentimes, the root of all the bickering and the fighting and the animosity is due to the fact that we think we deserve more. And we deserve better. And we got the short end of the stick. And here, as all of these regions are being described, it was an attempt to make clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, who got what based on God's will, based on God's decision. It wasn't a process that was overly politicized. No one was, doing favors for someone else. It wasn't, these deals weren't being done under the table. God was dictating everything that was happening. And this was supposed to be a documentation of that, because it was known that these people would eventually complain. And here we have an example of such complaint. After being given their land by lot, the children of Joseph came to Joshua to bicker and to complain. And essentially their argument was, well, you know that we are a numerous people. If you combine both of these tribes, or just, describe them as the children of Joseph, then count our numbers, you will know, and you should know, that we are the most numerous tribe. We have the greatest amount of people. And based on some quick math, the very rapid calculation of the description of the land that was given to us, guess what, Joshua? And by the way, Joshua was an Ephraimite. So maybe they were trying to kind of, have him be on their side much more so than other tribes. So again, they come to Joshua and they basically, start complaining. Telling Joshua, we are of great number, more so than any other tribe. And we deserve a bigger portion of the land, because it seems like just one portion. And as they were describing, it was almost like, okay, the land that was given to us, it's good enough for one of us. So basically give us a lot more, twice as much. And then Joshua very wisely turns around and quite literally utilizes their argument against them by saying, well, if you are so numerous, if you have so many people, shouldn't you be able to conquer your own territory? For example, there's this region up on the hills, and there's this forest land, and you could cut down the forest, and you could attack this region that is inhabited by giants, and these other people that should be expelled from the territory that was given to you. Do so. And they went back and forth, but ultimately, the message that Joshua wanted to send was, this should not be a problem. You have been given enough. It is true that you are numerous, but it is also true that the land that was given to you is more than enough. If we see an image, and I think I have a map in here somewhere, and this is a familiar map. If you have a Bible, towards the back of your Bible, there are all these nice resources, including maps. But if we see, half the tribe of Manasseh, who got their land to the east of the Jordan, pretty big portion. The one east and west, I should say, and then down below, Ephraim. So if you add all that up, we see that it is a great amount of land. Ultimately, they had more than enough, yet they still felt the need. They still felt entitled to go and complain to Joshua. And again, their reasoning to them made perfect sense. We need more land. But not only, or necessarily, we need more land, we need the right type of land. As we can see, the region was great, much more so than any other tribe, but it was balanced. based on the number of people in that particular tribe, in those tribes, they receive a proportionate amount of land. The issue that they had was the land that was given to them, the land that was allotted to them, it was a challenging land. The enemies that were there, they were stronger. Apparently, other tribes that received other portions of land, it was much easier for them to inhabit and conquer it. But the children of Joseph, when they looked upon their allotments, they said, we deserve more. We deserve better. And Joshua was saying, you have enough. Work. Fight for it. You are a great people, a great number of people. It should not be a problem. As we look at this story within its context, it is clear to see that their problem wasn't about land. Their problem was actually regarding God's sovereign choice for them. And they were complaining. What were they complaining about? They were complaining about God's lot. Again, the description is very clear. Every single time the tribes received a portion of the promised land, it was by lot. So ultimately, if there is a complaint, it is a complaint regarding God's lot, or, in other words, God's fairness. And amongst themselves, before going to Joshua, they were probably, trying to rationalize and think over what to say. But ultimately, the reasons why they felt that this was an issue, it was because they thought, God, we don't have enough. Or God, look at the other tribes. They have so much more. Or God, why is it that we got the hardest land to conquer and everyone else gets the easy portion of the land to conquer? It is not fair. We deserve more. We deserve better. Make an adjustment. You are not being fair. The land was diverse. This wasn't just, plains. There were valleys. There were mountains. There were regions that was very fertile. As we've seen before, there were regions that were rather arid, desert land. Yet God, based on his wisdom, divided it up and gave it to particular tribes, knowing what ultimately they needed. And this is something that we see in the Bible rather frequently. We see people complain. We see people question. We see people wonder, God, directly or indirectly, why don't I have more? Why don't I have it easier? Why do they have better than me? And ultimately, the answer to these questions and the solution to these problems is found in the principle of God knows best. God knows best. For example, we have passages such as the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. And we're familiar with that passage, so I'm not going to read it, but the gist of that story was basically a master who had servants, and the master was going away. And based on their abilities, and it's literally described in that manner, based on their abilities, the master gave servants amounts of talent. To one, he gave 5. To another, he gave 2. And to another, he gave 1. When he came back, the one that had 5 had more and provided it to the master. The one that had 2 did something similar. But the one that only had 1 talent, again, according to his ability, said, my master is a severe man. I'm scared to lose this 1 talent, so I'm going to bury it. Keep it safe, yet useless. When he came, what did the master do? He gave more to the ones that had and took away to the one that had the fewest. Why? Because he did not utilize to the best of his ability that which God had given him. God knows. Oftentimes, the problems, the individual problems that we have in our lives, and there are a variety of them here, right? Whether we're talking about familial, relational issues, financial issues, questions about feelings, health, society in general, you name it. So many problems, so many issues. Oftentimes, it seems like God is just plain and simple being unfair. It seems like he has given us something that is rather inadequate. It seems like we deserve more, especially when we compare ourselves to others. But ultimately, God knows best. And if we are faithful with what he has given us, the promise is that he will continue to provide for us in accordance to our needs. Again, Joseph's sons, the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh, they had enough. Was it going to be challenging? It was. Did other tribes receive regions that were, easier to conquer? Potentially, possibly. But that did not change the fact that this was by lot. In other words, God's choice. And this whole story is about them doing things that God himself empowered them to do. It wasn't based on their strength, willpower, knowledge, abilities. It was about them being faithful to God, and in return, God continuing to provide for them based on his will, based on his timing and decision making. So with Joseph, as Joshua is sort of managing their ego, and again, probably being a little sarcastic while he's doing that, he just basically said, okay, go and fight for it. Go and conquer it. You have enough. God has given you this, and he has done so for a reason. If you just believe, have faith, and follow through, you will see that there was a reason for God's choice for you to be inhabiting this particular plot of land, having to fight these particular people, being in this strategic region. And in a similar way, when we face our battles and challenges and consequently complain about them, you do, I do as well, constantly complain, bicker. We need to be reminded of this. God is more than fair. And ultimately, I've said this before, we're not really looking for fairness. We're looking for privilege. When we complain about God's fairness, what we're actually saying is we want to be privileged as the next guy. Fairness would be something that we do not want to experience. But again, God is more than fair. He gives us as much as we can handle in accordance to our ability. And our job is just to be faithful with that. Our job is to understand that based on God's sovereignty and wisdom, whatever we are going through, it is right, it is just, it is perfect. It will stimulate our faith. It will grow us stronger. It will give us a perspective in life that would be otherwise impossible if we were not put into that particular situation, condition, area of our lives. So let us listen to the wise words of Joshua. Move forward. Be strong. Be faithful with what God has given you. Don't worry about anything else, and it will be fine in the end. Amen.